Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Tommy here from Saleslucky, and I just finished up a book. It's called Greenlights by Mcconaughey, the Hollywood actor. And I gotta say, it's one of the best books I've read in a while, and it's so good. I wanted to share 4 things that I learned from this book. Okay, in this book, Matt really shares really authentically his journey as a man growing to become a Hollywood actor, and growing beyond that and expanding his career and all his personal thoughts and whatnot, right? So 4 things I learned from this book. Number 1 is bet on the intangibles. What do I mean by this? So in the book, Matt talks about how when he was younger, he would do a lot of sports betting, and he would win a lot of these bets, and he would focus on the intangible factors. So, for example, like an all-star quarterback, happens to lose his father a few days before the game. Well, now the star quarterback has something extra to play for, has that intangible factor of this burning desire to make his father proud. So that would be an intangible. Things like that. And he said he would bet on the intangibles, not necessarily the stats or the numbers, but the intangible factors happening behind the scenes. And he would bet on those things with that information. He would win a lot of bets. And so that's something I learned, and what a takeaway that I got from that, or something that reminds me of that concept, is how in sales we need to kind of read between the lines a lot of times, right? Not necessarily paying attention to what the prospect says, but more so the actions of what the prospect is doing, and reading their body language or nonverbal cues, or just reading their what their actions are saying overall. So number 1 is bet on the intangibles. Number 2 is trust your instincts. In the book, Matt talks about how there's a moment when he's in Ural, Africa, and this big, champion wrestler challenges him to a wrestling match, and he was going to back out, but this inner instinct, this inner voice says, try it or you'll never know what you're capable of. And because he heard that voice, he went and took on the challenge and ended up being the winner in that match. And that kind of reminds me of instances where I've listened to that voice or a little hunch within myself to trust my instincts, and the awesome things that's come out of that. It's just a reminder to really trust our instincts, because we have our subconscious mind, and we have sometimes we get signals from from our deeper consciousness that tells us to do a certain thing. And I was told to trust those instincts, because it's a greater intelligence at play there. It's not just your logic. Hope that makes sense. That's number 2, is trust your instincts. When do you get hunches? When do you get instincts to do a certain thing? Instincts are incredibly important. Number 3 is play to your strengths. So Matthew didn't really have like a typical rise to stardom in Hollywood where he struggled for years and years. He pretty much became successful and was very, very fortunate. He would say, where he became pretty famous overnight. And he's obviously a very successful actor, and he looks the part. And he just reminded me to play to your strengths. Whatever strengths the universe or God gave you, you got to use that and leverage that to make the most out of what you're trying to do. Everyone has different gifts and strengths. So what strengths do you have that you can leverage, where that can be your secret sauce maybe the other person doesn't have? A secret I've realized recently is how really, it's really about being ourselves, being our truest self. And that really is the competitive advantage, whether it's in sales, whether it's, when it comes to your style, whether it's in business as an entrepreneur. It really is the competitive advantage there, by being true to yourselves. Like they say, know yourself. But in order to, when they say be yourself, right? But in order to be yourself, you must first know yourself. It's like that ancient saying, know yourself, know thyself. And then lastly, number 4, is know yourself. So, another thing I really got out of this book was just how well Matt knew himself. Even when he was younger in high school and college days, he just had a really strong sense of self. And I think to do that, that's super important in any person's development. And, oftentimes, if we don't have that early on in life, we go through a growth period or evolution phase where we develop that within ourselves to understand ourselves better. And sometimes people don't do that for the rest of their entire lives, or people do that later in their lives. It just depends. But it was very clear that because of Matt's upbringing, again, we all have different upbringings, right? Given his upbringing, he knew himself very well, young, and that served him well. He wasn't misguided. He knew what he wanted. He knew who he was. And because he knew his own values and what he was brought up with, he wasn't led astray. And I think in life and in sales, because it goes hand in hand, the better that we know ourselves, who we are, what we're set out to do, if we're clear on helping the prospect in front of us, it's going to make all the difference in the world. That way we don't get led astray when, distractions come up. So I hope you guys got value out of this video. If you guys did, please share it with a friend. And as always, trying to grow this movement here at Saleslucky. And I'll see you guys soon. Cheers.